All right, well, thanks for coming out tonight. This is great. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about, how many of you are big Edgar Cayce fans like me? Yay! Okay, so we will, of course, discuss the world's greatest psychic. I'll talk a little bit about my background and how I got into working with the gems and stones, and I'm also a past life regression therapist. And then I want to tell the story about how I came to get in with the Edgar Cayce Foundation through some dreams and some interesting things that happened. And then we're going to talk about how and why gem healing works. And I'm going to pass around some of these different stones. We'll talk about the energetic properties of some of those. And then we'll talk about like how can you use these more consciously. Do we have massage therapists here? Or energy healers? I know we've got plenty of those, all right? Yay, okay. So we'll talk about like how we can more fully integrate the stones into our daily lives more consciously perhaps than we were before. This information really is going to be really the scaled down version of things that I teach full day workshops on. Like I've been to a lot of the ARE field conferences in the past and things like that. So this will be kind of a little overview, if you will. All right, so let me see. I'm going to start with my background a little bit. So I grew up in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Has anybody ever been to New Mexico or out there now? Okay. You know what's weird is like I've been out teaching this material for over a decade now, which is really about over 15 years, which is hard to believe how time flies. I think everybody knows what I'm talking about. But when I first used to talk about Albuquerque, people were like, what? I've never heard about that before. But now there's a lot of filming going on in New Mexico, and the spiritual community there has really opened up. So a lot of people are more aware of what that place is. So I grew up in Albuquerque, New Mexico. I was born there. And when I was a kid, my dad, initially he worked for a company called Maisels. And what they did was they actually manufactured a lot of the Native American style jewelry that you still see there. If you're driving across Texas going into Santa Fe or wherever, and you stop at those little roadside Stuckey stores where they sell moccasins and things, you can still see some of that jewelry there. So he was friends with a lot of the Native Americans, and they taught him how to make jewelry, and now he's a custom knife maker. So a lot of his artistic creativity he learned from the Native Americans when we lived out in New Mexico. And so the company basically was purchasing all of their stones and materials from the Arizona mines, which a lot of which are no longer open, because this was back in the 70s. And so at one point, when I was 10 years old, we moved to Phoenix, to Mesa, Arizona, and my dad was actually the manager of the Kingman and Bisbee Turquoise mines. And I'm going to tell you more about my connection to Edgar Cayce, but that really was the first one, even though obviously I was a kid, I didn't realize it. But in his lifetime, just, in a nutshell, we all know Edgar Cayce, but just in case we don't, he was considered the world's greatest psychic. He gave over 14,000 readings over the course of his lifetime. And how he was awakened to that gift was, he was kind of sickly and he had different health problems. And so someone said, hey, you need to go to a hypnotherapist. And when he went there, they put him in a trance, and he went so deeply into trance that he began bringing through the source, and he would tell people exactly what was wrong with them and really strange things that they needed to do. And then when they tried them, they worked. And so in studying, I've done a lot of studying. I've been an ARE member for years and years. And in studying the life readings, one of the most interesting things for me personally was that Edgar Cayce took one road trip during his lifetime, and he went to that Bisbee, Arizona area on a road trip. And that's like where my dad was the manager there. I spent my childhood down there. So that was the first of many weird coincidences, which I will continue to tell you, that kind of got me associated with the ARE. So down in that area, this is, it's hard to explain, but I still go out to Tucson usually every year to the gem show. So if we leave from here, you just get out on I-20, you go out 20 to 10, and you're going through New Mexico. Before you hit Tucson out there, down in that area in southern Arizona, that's where these mines were. Like a lot of this jewelry I have on tonight, a lot of the stones I have up here have really never been out of my house before, but this is some of the really old stuff. Like these are old pieces from these mines from back in the 70s. they don't make it like this anymore because these mines are not even open anymore. But Edgar Cayce was spiritually called to go down there because, as I also believe, Cayce talked about Atlantis and Lemuria and that area down there, stretching from Arizona, going on down into Peru. I've traveled to Peru in this lifetime too, is, what we believe was the lost continent of Lemuria. There's a lot of really powerful spiritual energy in that area, and that turquoise just embodies a lot of that ancient energy and wisdom. And so he went down there, and I just thought that was kind of cool. So I lived in Arizona. My dad used to fly planes, and we would fly into the turquoise mines. And turquoise is weird because there's a picture of in my new book of turquoise. Sometimes, in sandstone cliffs, this is just sediments that are just dripping down between the layers of sandstone over millions and millions and millions of years it takes to form that. So I remember when I was a kid just going out to the mines while they're just peeling away those sandstone layers and just being surrounded by that. I've just been around this stuff. It's like my whole life. It's like really who I am. I mean, this is it, Here it is. I've never grown up. I'm still a child several years later. So on vacation, we'd go to Colorado or we'd be out gold panning. And, that was just kind of the way of life for me. And when I was about, 10, or I guess it was when I was 12-ish, we moved off to Colorado Springs. And my mother went to a luncheon. Have you ever heard of the book, The Search for Bridie Murphy? Yeah. Real famous past life regression book. So this is so weird, but my mother was invited to a luncheon that the woman who was the subject of that book was there, and she got to meet her. And so basically that was another story similar to kind of what happened to Edgar Cayce. The woman has horrible allergies. She's sick all the time. It's just awful. Somebody finally says, look, you're not getting well. Why don't you go see a hypnotherapist? So they took her back to childhood. Maybe she got a little bit better, but it wasn't fully happening. So the hypnotherapist said, look, I want you to go back to the source event where this stuff happened. So the lady zips back to this life that she had in ancient Ireland and starts talking about little, really intricate details about the things that went on in the village and speaking in a totally different accent and everything. And so as a result of that, they wrote this whole book about it. And so a lot of people, I think we talked to some of you as you were coming in, or maybe it was this afternoon, I was at an event. We were talking about a lot of us were kind of maybe recovering Catholics or coming out of the church and stuff like that. And that's just, it's strange, I guess. It just seemed normal to me, but that's just not ever been my experience. Like when I was a little girl, there we were, and we're sitting around the dinner table talking about the fact that this lady probably lived before and that maybe the Creator is a vast thing that is beyond really any of our comprehension. And so what really was not normal apparently was normal to me. That's just what I've always thought. That's what I've always believed. And the thing that I've always resonated like with the Bible. This new book has a whole section in it about the stones that are in the Bible. This has been something I've been wanting to write for years and years and years. And it's because the thing I liked about the Cayce work that resonates with me is because I still consider myself a Christian. But can we hold these two concepts of maybe I've lived before and I'm a Christian? Can we kind of hold those in the same space? And Cayce's always been able to do that. I've never had a problem with it, but so that's kind of how I kind of have that kind of a worldview. And so that's why I've always really resonated with that material. So anyway, this is kind of how I grew up. Okay, then the boring years of being a teenager. We all remember those. Maybe we don't want to remember them. When I was in I don't know when I was. Well, as an adult, I had a near-death experience in 2000, and I started hearing a voice saying, there's something wrong with my heart. I'm not going to live much longer. And I lifted up out of my body, and I went into the light. And it was one of those things that you really can't quite describe because you're going, okay, it's just like what you read about in Raymond Moody's books. And that's another whole story. He's the person who introduced me to the ARE in the first place. But I'm floating out there. I see some relatives. I know it's not time to go. I come back. And then I started having energy in my hands, and I went on a long journey, a long spiritual journey. A lot of my earlier books are about that. about kind of trying to come to terms with this healing. And I ended up doing some energy work. I used to just do energy work all the time out at the metaphysical stores. There was a store called Spirit Walk up in Denton, and that's where I first started getting that I needed to go out and do energy work. And the owner up there, who is our friend Trish, who we've known for many years, she's down in San Antonio now, she just said, hey, could you teach a class? And I thought, I want to teach about some of these stones, because earlier, it's such a long story, it's just hard to tell you about things that have been going on for 20 years, but I had met this shaman while I was out in the desert, and he showed me that you could lay a stone on your, he basically took a piece of fluorite. Do I have a piece of fluorite? Oh, I do. This is a purple one, but I don't have any of the green ones, but this is a piece of fluorite. There's also bright green fluorite, which I don't have. So he gave me a piece of green fluorite, put it on my forehead, and just told me to just lay there and hold still. And when we talk about what we're getting ready to talk about tonight, I mean, yes, I grew up in the mines and everything, but it's one thing to know that I'm a rock hound and I like to go out and pick up shiny rocks, but it's another thing to say, hey, wait a minute, there's some energetic potential here that wasn't really in my conscious awareness until this gentleman put this thing on my forehead. And I'm sitting there going, okay, what is this? This isn't real, blah, blah, blah. Everything that everybody says to me, did not believe it. And all of a sudden, I just started feeling these rushes of energy. And I said, my gosh, there's something to this. And so that's when I began experimenting with the stones. And about this time, the shop owner goes, well, could you come over and teach a class? And I said, yeah, I've been kind of playing around with these stones. This guy taught me some stuff. So I had this little gem healing workshop at that store up there. And then it started taking off. And so I wrote my first book. Meanwhile, the other thing that happened when I was a kid that was probably another weird thing that makes me as weird as I am today. Normal kids, I don't know what they were doing when they were 9 years old, but I was busy reading Life After Life by Dr. Raymond Moody. And I was sitting out in my driveway looking up at the New Mexico sky going, oh my God, we're all gonna die. What is this? And maybe there's a life after this life. And it just kind of hit me really hard. Like, I have a continual internal feeling that I've had since I was a child about the brevity of this life, and that we better be out doing what we want to do. We better be making the most out of every day, because it's just so short here. Maybe we've lived before, but as ourselves, this is just a little inkling in time, and it's very important for me personally, and I think everybody knows what I'm talking about, just to get tuned into what we really want to be doing with the time that we have here, because it's so brief. And so, long story, through the person who taught me about stones, I ended up meeting Raymond Moody, went to Las Vegas, where he was in charge of a department out there in Las Vegas on consciousness studies, and I really thought I was going to go to work for him, but as it turned out, I ended up writing a book. He wrote the foreword for the book, and then we kind of went on tour together. And I went to his workshop he has a workshop. He does a lot of studies with helping people have visionary encounters with their lost loved ones. So I went to his workshop, and that is where I met my friend from the Edgar Cayce Foundation. She took my little rock book and some of my other books that I had written up to Virginia Beach, and she began sending me books. And she sent me a book called, Edgar Cayce on Stones. It was written in 1964. It was real small, had like 22 items in it. And so I was in the process of every year going out to Tucson to the gem show, kind of on this drive across the desert pilgrimage to pick up materials and bring them back to town. And I took that book with me, and I said, I'm going to go look for some of this, because some of this is kind of unusual, and I have never maybe even heard of it before, and I certainly have never worked with it before. So I went on this kind of scavenger hunt, and I started collecting a lot of those materials in that first book. And on my drive back home across the desert, I thought, my gosh, that was 1964. I mean, maybe I should contact them and see if they need this thing updated. So I called my friend, and literally the day before I called, they were in the conference room up there in Virginia Beach going, can we please get somebody to update this material? And so I wrote a book that came out 10 years ago in 2005. Oh my gosh, I can't believe it. It was called Edgar Cayce's Guide to Gemstones. And back at that time, I went on the Edgar Cayce Circuit Tour, and it was very exciting. And I went, and I had been having dreams about Virginia Beach. And then when I got there, it was just, you know, how many of you have been up to Virginia Beach? Everybody needs to go up there. It is really incredible up there. There's something very, very powerful there. So I went up there, and there was always in my mind, I told them 10 years ago, I said, I am going to write another book for you. I don't know what it is. So I'd say, how about this? And they go, no, I don't think so. How about that? Dennis knows what I'm talking about. He's a writer. Any writers in here? You know what I'm saying? So you throw it out there, they're like, no, not this. How about that? No, not this. Okay. So it's always kind of been in the back of my mind, you know, that there's something undone there. I know I have to do this. And I've had this idea about this book that I want to call Stones of the Bible. So about 3 years ago, I started getting that I was going to reread all of the books that I had written and look at a bunch of what I'm going to call half-baked projects and see what have I left undone. And so I basically, well, let me see where it is. Okay, they're showing me this. Okay, I don't have that first book with me, but when I wrote Edgar Cayce's Guide to Gemstones, there was a lot, you know, those of us who study the readings, there's a lot that you get like from just reading that. It kind of inspired me. And I ended up doing a lot of other writing from that first book. I ended up writing a whole book about these special seed crystals that people believe that are tuned into Lemuria. And then I wrote this other book that was called Divination of God. And it's about, because when I wrote the Cayce book, the first one, there's a small section about the stones that were in the Bible. This woman heard me on the radio, and she sent me the Book of Mormon, and I started getting into this whole idea about the stones of the breastplate in the book of Exodus, and that behind there is the Urim and the Thummim, and these are in the Torah, and they're very holy and ancient. And so this is how the priest would communicate with God. They would just reach behind there, and if the answer was yes, they would pull one. If the answer was no, they would pull another. And so I wrote a whole book about this that was published by this woman who was publishing a lot of Dr. Mark Thurston's books. You know Dr. Mark Thurston? He's really profound. He was the research director for the ARE and a great friend of mine. So she published my book, went out of business, blah, 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 blah. Delivered the rights back to this book. And a few years ago, when I was going through this, I had to order the book on Amazon because it's out of print. I didn't even have the manuscript anymore. It was lost. And when I read the book, there's a section in there that was about Edgar Cayce, and it has so much information in it. I said, oh my God, I have got to call them right away because I know they need to publish this now. But this stuff is like what I'm talking about. It's so obscure. Like nobody even knows about this. I've been studying this for over 10 years. And so I basically republished the book, and I took the Cayce material out of it. So what this is about is that in the Bible, there really was a divination system. Like in the Bible, some of us believe that there's certain books and things that were taken out of the Bible long ago, such as the thought that maybe we lived before, or the thought that there is a stone. We don't know whether it's a stone or not, but did anyone read the book called The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho? Okay, this kind of inspired me when I read that book. It's about a shepherd boy who goes on a journey and he meets a king. It's like a biblical allegory. And the king gives him these stones and says, these are very important, and I want you to hold them, and I only want you to take them out if you are in dire need of some help. And so he gets into this situation, and he understands that he needs to ask these, and he pulls out one, and it says yes or no. I don't remember the whole story, but you should read The Alchemist. It's very powerful. So it kind of gave me this idea that I should write a book about this, because to me, it's a lost chapter of the Bible. And so I peeled out everything that is not Edgar Cayce related, and I republished it. And today, I ran a free book promotion, so if you guys make a note of this, you get on your Kindles. If you order this on Amazon before midnight tonight, it's free, because I just ran a free book promotion on this. But this is the precursor to what then got peeled out. This is the second edition, and then I took all the Edgar Cayce stuff, and I put it into this new book, and I sent a proposal over to them, and I said, I want to call this Stones of the Bible. And they're like, well, you know, maybe that doesn't appeal to everybody. Maybe most people, but maybe not people like us. Okay, so they said, well, how about sacred stones? Well, sure enough, in my computer, I had another document that was called Sacred Stones. So the ideas got put together. So this new book, basically, is, it's got a whole section on stones of the Bible, but it's really talking about the fact that the ideas that my Native American friend taught me about the fact that stones have energy, and that, you know, everything that God put on this earth, or creator, or however it is that you view that, everything has energy, everything has a purpose, you know, and these are just tools that the Creator used for us. There is nothing wrong with that. And, you know, this is a Native American belief, it's a shamanistic belief, it's been passed down through different indigenous cultures all over the world, and it's something found in the Bible. So the book kind of goes into more of the spiritual aspects of the stones, whereas my first book was more about the periodic table of the elements and how the stones relate to the elements. Because I used to have kind of maybe a lot of us do, like kind of an aversion to what I was calling chemicals. Well, chemicals are the periodic table of the elements. Yes, certain concentrations of them may not be good, but when we can energetically come to peace with certain elements, you know, one of the things that was so powerful for me when I studied the Edgar Cayce readings was the fact that he'd tell somebody, you know, here, take a little arsenic, and you'd be like, arsenic, oh my gosh, no, you know, but that would maybe be what the person needed to get well, right? Because you know how, like, I don't know who I was talking to about this, maybe I was hearing it somewhere, I don't know, you never know. You know, the more you go against something, then the more you're creating an aversion to it. We need to love and accept all things and realize that every part of our body is part of the building blocks of the universe, and that is the periodic table of the elements and the elements. So the first one was kind of more body related, and this next book is more spirit related in a sense. And so that's kind of how the whole thing kind of happened. It's very strange. So I feel very connected to that work. I feel like that it's important that the ARE continues to do what they're doing and be supported and put out the work of Edgar Cayce, because it's been proven time and time and time again that the things he said for certain people, yes, those were individual readings, but we can glean that wisdom out of that, and there's just wisdom there that needs to be continuing to be perpetuated for hundreds and hundreds of years after all of us have gone on to the next life, you know, in my opinion. So that's why I'm just really excited. And on a more like a soul level, Phil was actually, let me tell the story, yes. So Phil's birthday is October 19th, and so he's a Libra, and my birthday is April 19th, and I'm an Aries. So we're literally about as different as two people can be. And so that's why we are exact complements. And along that line, Phil was pointing out that I'm getting ready to come to my 7 sevens in my life. So it's kind of like the ending of a big life cycle for me. I feel like a lot of loose ends from the first half of my life are starting to get really wrapped up. And knowing that this book is done now, because always in the back of my mind, this has just been nagging at me for 10 years. And knowing that it's that book, it's always like right in front of you, and you just don't see it. So I feel really happy about it, and I'm just really excited that people are kind of resonating with it now. I was very, very excited this summer when we're talking about the whole idea of the breastplate. I do like to watch TV, thank you, okay, and I was watching the USA Network. They had this really interesting program on. You can probably get it on Netflix now if you've not seen it. It's very interesting. It's called Dig, and it was all filmed in Jerusalem, and it's this kind of mystery intrigue about this evil ambassador, and they're stealing the stones out of the breastplate. And the Urim and Thummim are there, and I'm like, oh my God, this is on network television. And it just kind of reaffirmed, this book hadn't come out yet, but it was already kind of being edited at that time, and I went, oh my gosh, maybe people are finally ready to hear this. I don't know why. It's just important. There's something about tapping into the stones. Like as a regression therapist, I guess I've been thinking more at this point in my life about the fact that, I like to travel all over the world. Like I go to different places just because I feel like I'm trying to go back to places where maybe I've lived before. But it's just not physically possible for us to get everywhere where we need to be. And so to me, like working with gems and minerals is really one of the best ways that we can tap into those kinds of things without having to physically put ourselves on a plane and go somewhere. And that was really the whole gist of the Cayce readings, and where he recommended a lot of the minerals was because he was doing past life readings for people. For example, the lapis lazuli stone was the one that he mentioned more than any other because he was doing a lot of readings for those people in Egypt. And he was talking about the fact that simply just being around the stone, placing it on the body, wearing it in jewelry, or having it in the room would cause vibrational frequencies in the person that can really heal and transform the person on a very deep level. And so it's kind of this. What was also so validating is that the work that I'd already been doing in the stones that had been taught to me through different traditions, then to come to the Cayce work and realize he's saying the same thing, that this is all vibrations, and that basically all stones are vibrating at certain frequencies. So depending on whatever it is we need to attract to ourselves, we can use different gems and minerals to bring that to ourselves. So, okay, great. So what do we want in this life? We only want three things. We want love. We want our health, because if we don't have our health, we're not going to get out of bed this morning to do anything else. And then we want what I'm going to call that blanket of security, whether it be just a feeling that everything's okay, or we actually need cash, or we just need abundance, or whatever, that kind of feeling of being secure in the world. And to me, all of the stones vibrate at such frequencies that when we begin to introduce them into our energetic fields, our fields begin to shift, and then we begin to attract the things we want. It's kind of like the work of The Secret and the laws of attraction. It's the same thing, but we're using the stone as a physical manifestation and a representation in the physical world that reminds us energetically of how to shift those frequencies into what we actually want to create. So before I start passing around rocks and talking about what we think they can do or not do and have you play with those, do I have any questions? Yes.
Do you know what the stones were in the breastplate?
Off the top of my head, let's see.
No, I don't mean a pop quiz. They wondered what they were. People don't really know what those were. Have you researched enough to? In the first book, in the second book, I committed to a set of them, which off the top, it's in this book. I have to look at it. In the first book, I talked about the fact that the Temple Institute in Jerusalem has done particularly a lot of research on biblical probabilities of what stones were there. For example, the emerald. Everybody calls it an emerald, but now they're thinking, well, maybe it wasn't actually an emerald. It could have been more like something that's related to turquoise. Because in biblical, if we talked about geological probability of what was actually there at that time, certain stones wouldn't have been there geologically, if that makes any sense. So therefore, in the first book, I get into kind of a comparison of all the different possibilities. If you look, what's kind of interesting is when you look at different versions of the Bible, you'll see in the New International Version, a lot of what I like to write, I think this has got to be some of my past lives coming through, obviously, or else I wouldn't be spending 10 years on this stuff, but I'm really attracted to the Old Testament personally, and so I kind of like to gravitate to the King James Version of the Bible and talking about the stones that were there. But in the New Version, for example, they would have called it lapis or sapphires in some versions of the Bible, but in the New International Version, they might call it turquoise. Biblically speaking, the stone lapis, I think I have one up here. The stone lapis and turquoise, these are kind of cousins geologically. but like sapphires would have been maybe less likely because that's a totally different material and it probably wasn't really around that whole area. I brought, let's go ahead and pass this around. This is a can of my dad's ancient, this has never been out of the house. This stuff is serious. This is malachite, very profound. This is a cousin to turquoise and lapis in these as well. Malachite, medicinally, we had some people who were suffering from like liver cancer. They can hold this and wear this, and I mean, again, please use common sense, folks. You know what I'm talking about. But people have literally prolonged their life by up to 7 years by using this. Although it's theoretically toxic. Like in my first book, which was called Gemstone Journeys, I talked about making a gem elixir where we put a crystal in water and soak it in the sun and drink it. Don't ever do that with this because this could be, you know, toxic. But sometimes energetically, for some reason, this is very, very powerful as a detoxer for that, and it can help specifically with the liver. That would be including, what's that other thing that my friend has? What's that ailment of the liver? You know what I'm talking about. Hepatitis. Cirrhosis, yes. Hepatitis is what I'm thinking of. So anyway, I'll pass some of these around so you guys can sense the energy of this stuff. It's so cool. I don't even think this has been touched by human hands before. I've got jasper, yes. Jasper was in the breastplate. Diamond, ruby. And really, like in the book of Revelation, they talked about crystals. And somebody wants to know, has anyone researched actually trying to find the breastplate? The problem is, like a lot of the ancient mysteries, that we're never going to really know. I used to be really into like my research. But a lot of this newer stuff, I have to admit, it's kind of channeled. I don't know. I mean, you know what I mean? I have to admit that. So I can't honestly remember all of these. Okay, so here's the stones. This is in the King James Version. So in the first row, there's a sardius. Sard is, it's pictured in the book, but that's like a carnelian. Carnelian is one of my personal favorite stones. It is vibrating at the frequency of the color orange. So one aspect of energy healing that I get into in the books is the chakras. So we've got the chakra, we've got the root chakra, which is the ruby. We've got the carnelian, which is the orange chakra. So this one this is a creativity stone. We have a friend here who has allergies. This is really good for allergies. If we just lay it here on these, you know, this is your sinuses right here. I call it a chakra balancing. You could call it a nap. That's what, you know, laying there in the afternoon, whatever you want to call it. Putting the little stone on the sinuses, and then you will start to feel this open up. Or you could just carry it around. Normally when you're doing a healing like this, it's kind of like what happened to me the first time the guy put the stone on my forehead. There's nothing happening, and then all of a sudden there's this zzz, this energy, and then it's going to taper off. This could take 20 minutes, about the time of a good power nap, but it's kind of like an energy. Sometimes if you lay a stone on and you're just laying there, it'll actually kind of put you to sleep. And you'll kind of sleep, and then all of a sudden when you ride the wave, then you'll kind of wake up and you go, ooh, I feel different. All right, I'm ready to go. And then you just step out there. This is one of the only stones, and I'll tell you the other one here in a minute. For me, this is called carnelian, but in the biblical times it was called sardius, S-A-R-D-I-U-S. I'm coming to that question. I haven't forgotten it. Carnelian, C-A-R-N-E-L-I-A-N. I feel like that's the spelling bee. How did I do? Yay, I'm getting an A in English again. No, just kidding. So there's another stone. I wrote a book called Top 10 Healing Stones of All Time, which I will disclose the top healing stone here in just a moment. But other than that stone, for me personally, I guess I write like literally all the time, like it would scare people if they knew. Like I literally spent 7 years locked in a house doing nothing but writing, which is absolute craziness, insanity, other than for my friend Dennis over here. But anyway, I use the energy of this stone, and I have actually sucked the color out of these before. I use them so much. I think it's just because it's a creative stone. I think that's kind of just things that I need energetically. But I had sent this many, many years ago to my friend. I went to Appalachian State out in North Carolina. So I was the editor-in-chief of the college newspaper. And so in my earlier books, I had my friend who was my copy editor in college. She was editing some of my books. And she thought this was complete quackery, I must tell you. So I said, look, I'm going to send you some stones. And I sent her a carnelian. And she was the one who first reported that her allergies were better when she started like carrying it around. And then I started mentioning it to people, and then I started hearing about it from other people. Also the carnelian, there's more information in the new book about this, because I was just reading it the other day, about ancient people thought it warded off evil, and Napoleon Bonaparte used to wear a signet ring for protection in battle that he really believed was protecting him, and that was also a carnelian. It's a very powerful stone, and it was in the breastplate. Next is a topaz. I didn't wear my topaz today. I guess I should have. Well, no, that's not it. There's a picture of it in here. Topaz. Have you guys seen those really bright blue, beautiful square cut stones that everybody around here has? That's the Texas topaz. I've got a picture of it in my book. There's various colors of topaz, and again, I think topaz is probably biblically probable for that part of the world. In terms of that, but that's the other stone that was in the first row, and then the other one is a carbuncle, which is more like a garnet. Garnet is also pictured in the book. Garnets are the stone of love and commitment, so they can sometimes be used as an alternate to like an engagement ring, if you wanted to have a non-traditional engagement ring, or let's say you were already married and you want to just give a gift saying I love and respect you, you would get somebody a garnet ring. Years ago, I lived in Denver, Colorado, and I used to be the membership director for the historical district there. And so I used to take people on haunted tours, which was really cool, I have to say. I worked in this one building, and next door was the historic Oxford Hotel, which is right near the old train station, and all those restaurants. You know, that's where, in the days of the gold rush, the guys used to get off and go to the eat and drink and, you know, carouse and all of those things that word implies. And so the hotels and the restaurants and everything were really haunted. So I was in the Oxford Hotel one day with this garnet necklace on, and I was just walking down the hall when all of a sudden I felt this really cold, cold breeze. And then my necklace went, it was like it was burning. It just went, and then it went, and it just dropped into the floor. So we'll talk about another one of the stones that kind of does that. But the stone, this is a protective stone as well. It can really kind of take on energy to kind of protect you from energy. I didn't think it was really, I didn't think it was a bad spirit, but it was a very strong presence. Let's just put it that way. Garnet. The other one that would protect us while we're on that roll is hematite. Everybody's seen this, right? I've got a necklace of it up here too. This isn't the same one, but I had some friends who had an African gallery. Everybody has hematite. This is very affordable and reasonable, but hematite is even more powerful than the garnet. Like, if you have problems like at work or something, you can leave a little bowl of hematite there, or you can leave it in your pocket. And this was another one. My friend in North Carolina didn't believe it. Her husband was having problems at work. She gave him a hematite stone, and within 24 hours of putting it in his pocket, it cracked in two, because it will absorb some vibes and kind of spiritually protect you, but it'll actually crack. And so there's a whole cosmology about like why we need to clean stones and we need to cleanse them. So sometimes they need to be put out on the ground. So like, but if a hematite cracks, to me, these are real affordable. So just, I take it out to the plants and I just put it in the yard underneath the plants, and it kind of just allows the vibes to kind of go down, and it actually make your plants grow, kind of like a fertilizer. But I had also a It was kind of similar. I don't remember what was going on at the time, but it was kind of like this, a necklace like this. But it was from my friends at this African gallery. It came from Africa. I don't know what was going on, but it was, again, something weird was swirling around me. The thing kind of went, and it just went, and it just dispersed all over the floor for no reason. You know, and so that's what will happen. Or if it doesn't just disperse and crack, you'll see after a while, hematite is like the ore of iron. And so this kind of shiny stuff, it'll just start to dull down, and it just kind of looks, you know how some days you just feel like, woo, you're ready to go, and other days people go, gosh, you look like you need a nap. You know, hematite, when it's done with you, it looks like it needs a big nap. It needs a dirt nap, and you should just go put it inside the plants in the yard, and that would be a good thing to do with it. Okay, so I mentioned, I'll get back to the breastplate in here in a minute, but while we're on this roll here, we have these up here too. So I told you I take the color out of the carnelian. I just barely started reporting on that. I didn't write about that in really any of my earlier books, and so I haven't had time to really go around and see if this happens to other people. I believe it's because this brain just is always cranking out material. But the only other stone that I've really ever seen, when I wrote the book Top 10 Healing Stones of All Time, you know, in my private practice, I've always been a past life therapist, but I've always worked with energy healing. And it's because I believe that thoughts are things, like maybe a lot of us do. Okay, so it's one thing if I want to put us into a mild regression and take us back to our life in the 1800s, that's fine. We can verbally talk through that. We can heal it, cut it loose, let it go, heal, whatever, get an epiphany. But there's still an energetic component of that that's sitting out here in the unified field. And so that's why I think it's powerful to do energy healing, because if you address it on an energetic level and a verbal level, now you've made the total shift. And so I'm going to do, I'm going to bring this up in a minute, but okay, so let's have an example of what I'm talking about. Think about a toy or something that you used to like to play with when you were a child. Think about that right now. And then if you can, is it in your mind's eye? And then kind of reach out and say, well, where is that? And for me, I saw like a teddy bear. He was right here, and he's about this big. So can everybody like reach out and kind of see what I'm talking about? Like when you think about it, or how big is it? Or like I used to have people remember their bicycle, and I was like, oh, look, there's two of them. There's one there and there's one there, and they're about this big. So it just goes to show like memories are holographic in nature. So the reason why stones can be so powerful is because when we kind of wash through our field while we're kind of releasing things verbally, we can make a total shift. And so the point of this, is that I have a client who came to me several years ago. I'm really big into like, I believe in what I do because it's very transformational. It can happen right now, and it happens in a minute. We don't need to be coming back for therapy every week, and I don't want that. But this one client I had many years ago was very ill with some kind of weird, undiagnosed illness. Went to the doctor, went to the specialist, blah, 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 blah. Nothing's happening. Came to see me for some regressions. Loosened up some things to a certain degree. But he ended up coming to one of my gem healing classes. Took a piece of bloodstone home. Bloodstone is a dark green stone. The dark green comes from the chemical chlorite, which is very powerful. But inside the stone, there are typically these dark red flecks in it. So the guy takes the bloodstone home. So I had a workshop. He has a bloodstone, and he had left his cell phone or something, and I had to go meet him the next day to bring him his cell phone. Takes the bloodstone out of his pocket. He goes, what does this mean? This stone was white.
Oh my God.
It was clear, I swear. And if I had really realized how important that was, I would have said, give me that back. I need another one. I'll give you another one. But what ended up happening is he literally sucked the life out of this thing. And so what I started noticing after I started kind of putting that idea out to some clients, and then it kind of went out on the radio and a lot of people started reporting it, that the little red flecks normally are the things that get absorbed, and they call this the bloodstone. They believe that this may have been the stone under Christ, and that the red flecks represent the blood of Christ. So the stone really sacrifices itself and allows you to take on its physical properties for healing. And so I guess I mean, I've had weird things happen, but I have to say, once I saw that, then there was no doubt in my mind that something was happening with gems and minerals. And so that one, other than the Carnelian, the other one that does something similar, well, not exactly. This one, like I said, will literally turn clear. I've got a picture on my book. It's called Top 10 Healing Stones of All Time. On the front cover, it's a red bloodstone, because they can come in reds and greens, where the interior got sucked out and it's all white. And that was used by a friend of mine who had kidney failure. And I've known, these are really good for, yes, the lungs. There's a little girl who had cystic fibrosis. She did real well with these. But really, I would say any kind of ailment that a person has, to me, this is the top healing stone of all time in terms of providing physical support. It can be good for the circulation, but it's too vast what it does. And a lot of times my dad over the years, because he's like a chemical engineer, he'll kind of act like I'm a nut quack, but in a good way. He actually did admit at one point, though, that the Native Americans had told him all about the stone, but he never fully told me what they told him because it was secret. But because of all the interviews that I've done more on a national basis, I mean, I'm telling you, I was watching Guiding Light one day before it went off the air. The guy had cancer on the show, and they were giving him bloodstones, and I was like, I think they heard me on the radio, okay? Because this stuff actually works. So if there's something going on, just, I mean, again, I guess I want to say that it's the same thing that Edgar Cayce said. He was real into the fact that we don't need to be like treating these like good luck charms or amulets or talismans. I mean, if I think that, you know, I can't even go out today unless I have my little rock with me, then I become very paralyzed by that. So we want to just think of it as energetic support, but obviously still doing other things that we need to do to support ourselves. But this one is very, very powerful. And so the bloodstone and the carnelian are the only ones that I've seen really get sucked dry. The other one that was also listed on my list of top 10 would be the serpentine stone. Serpentine, I don't have any with me today, but I passed it around a room, and I was in Sedona teaching at the Unity Church. This girl comes from the back of the class. She goes, "I'm sorry, I think I messed up your rock." The thing had turned black just in the minutes that I had her hold it, because it will actually take your stuff on. And it took me a while to figure out serpentine is magnesium-based. And I'm a huge believer, I've been talking about this for years, about the powers of Epsom salts. You know, you get it at you can even get it in the plant department for really cheap, or you can get it in the little cartons next to like where you'd buy your stuff for your sprained ankle. But it's not just for sprained ankles. It puts magnesium, it's magnesium sulfide, goes into the system. It helps clear all the, you know, I talked about memories, but we also have like traffic, or we're worrying about the family. We've got all this stuff in our field. Clears out the field so that you can kind of get back into who you actually are. You know how you just don't always feel like you're even who you are anymore? I was talking about this the other night. You're someone's employee. Now you're a wife, a husband, a teacher, a mother, a pet owner. I mean, whatever. And you're just like, please, Calgon, take me away. Now I'm dating myself. Sorry, kids. Okay. Magnesium is very good for making us feel, getting back into that place of being centered and good. So anyway, powerful. I love it. All right, to answer your question, I have heard that people, there was a question in the back about, have they been trying to recreate a breastplate or find one? The answer is yes, but I don't really have the details on that. I know that there are groups that do, that are convinced that this is still existing. And like I said, the main organization that I always look at their research would be the Temple Institute out of Jerusalem. They've got a really great website. They're doing probably the most research, in my opinion, on trying to really identify this. But it's kind of, the thing about God or source, whatever, the universe, I mean, as much as we want to know every little thing, we're not going to know everything. We can know it in our soul. I mean, sometimes you're just not going to have proof, you know, of it. But I do know there are people who go out and try to find the breastplate.
Well, like the Ark of the Covenant.
Right, exactly. They're convinced. Yeah, some people think that's in Ethiopia and it's being guarded by this tribe in Ethiopia. And it may very well be. Who knows? Or is it a metaphor? Or is it existing on that parallel dimension that we don't happen to be living in right now? You know, anything's possible. Do we have another question?
Yes.
Okay, 1, 2, 3. Okay, ready, go.
What color is the serpentine before you?
Serpentine is pale green. Okay. Real pale green, like more like a seafoam green. And
It's for healing, right?
It's for healing, yes. It would heal. Serpentine would be good because of the magnesium. It's good for pain, or if like you've got arthritis, like my mom had really bad arthritis in her arm. It's good for that. It could be good for like if somebody had cancer or something, they're in a lot of pain. It'll take on the pain. Very, very good. One of the very best. So the question is like if the gems are created through an intense energy, would that have more of an impact than ones that aren't? In a sense, I think kind of all of them on some level. Well, I mean, I guess I think what you're talking about, some of them like drip, like the turquoise, dripping down over time rather than some kind of volcanic eruption. Is there a difference between that? The thing about it that's weird is that weird being a Celtic word meaning cosmic, thank you, is that what affects one person just doesn't affect the other person. So what would mean something that would just turn your life around, maybe for some other person would be like, well, I don't like that one, but this one's really doing it for me. So it's hard to put it into that kind of term because everybody, while we are all one, we are all still vibrating at slightly different frequency registers. And so one of the interesting stories about lapis that I do enjoy telling is that I teach a lot of long gem healing workshops. So I had this man in my gem healing workshop several years ago sitting there, oh my gosh, going like this. This is ridiculous. And finally he just couldn't keep it down anymore. This is nonsense. I have never heard anything like this. This doesn't make any sense. I don't believe in it. I was like, great. Okay, great. So I hand him this little piece of lapis that's literally like not even as big as my pinky finger here. And the minute he picked it up, he went. And he fell in love. It was like love at first sight, love at first touch.
With the rock or you?
Or both. No. That's another story, but we won't go there. Anyway, the rock, hopefully. But since he was a Texan, I mean, we live in Texas, but when I'm on like national shows or something, I tell him like, because he was in Texas, he had to put that little lapis in his bandana and wear it around at the ranch. And he never let go of that lapis. And what happened was, he told me from the minute he put it in his little bandana, he had really bad acid reflux, never had that problem again. And when I then later, this is before I wrote the first Cayce book, I was researching, Edgar Cayce actually said that lapis is helping migraine headaches, which are directly linked to acid reflux. And so I started recommending lapis for people who have migraines. And I have heard great reports on that over the years because that's what Edgar Cayce told people to do, which is to use the lapis for that. I mean, it's my belief system. It's just the way I grew up, but it's okay with me if you don't believe in it. It's just that when I saw things like the bloodstone and some of the other interesting things that I've seen over the years, I was a believer. So all I'm doing is just sharing my experience, really. And so just like the guy, if he stands up and says, this is a bunch of nonsense, okay, fine, but guess what? Then he kind of had an experience. So in terms of like, is it going to work if I don't really believe in it? I think that what's interesting, I guess that one of the things I feel like I'm doing when I give these talks is a lot of times people have never heard what I'm talking about before. But everybody in this room, practically, with very few exceptions, you're wearing jewelry, or, you know, or you picked a rock up off the ground, or you were in the jewelry store going, ooh, that's so beautiful. So it's happening whether you really know it's happening or not. I think it's just more of bringing it out into conscious awareness, like what happened to me. I can grow up in the mines and hang out, but I may not realize how that energy is actually affecting me until somebody actually shows it to me. And so specifically to address that, I had a friend whose father had leukemia. This was many years ago, and of course, so his son came to one of my classes, took some bloodstones, because that's one of the ones you would use for that, and just said, look, Dad, would you hold this in your pocket? And didn't tell him anything about it. Well, sure, and I said, well, just let me know how that goes, And so he said the thing started fading out a little bit. Because to me, it's still going to happen. I mean, maybe with our belief in it, then it happens more. But a lot of the things that I've seen, like we could say, like the chicken or the egg, like did I see a bloodstone fade because I believed in it? No, I really don't think so. I mean, but I now believe in it, so I guess I'm more open to looking for those synchronicities than I would have been. But the truth is, any vibrational frequency is affecting you. One of the things I like to use as kind of an example would be like, I mean, even guys, okay, but particularly ladies, you know how we go out and buy that new outfit and we wear it around all the time, we love it. Next thing you know, the thing is watered up in the corner. And you go, oh my gosh, look at that old thing, But when you first had it, you wanted to wear it all the time. There was something about its energy that made you feel something, And I mean, guys are the same way. Maybe you have your favorite T-shirt or something. I don't know, just anything that you use all the time. And I think clothing is a good example. I don't know, because you use it for a while. Like if I started using different stones for a while, like I used to use a lot of hematite. I don't really use it anymore. I don't know. After a while, to me, once I tune in with it, it shifts the frequency. So then it's not needed anymore. It kind of shifts you. Or maybe later on I might need it for something, but maybe right now I don't. That's which gets back to, hello, I'm finally there. When you walked in this evening, I mean, I guess part of my reason was I went to the beach, and I'm crazy, and I was like, oh, look at all these shells. And I'm like, what am I going to do with all those? Okay, but the other thing is I want you to reach into the bucket and pick out the shell, because not with your physical eyes, because one of the things I teach in my workshops is like, how are we going to pick stones out? I want you to pick it out with how it feels, because it's one thing if I say, all right, well, let me pick this one up and let me pick this one up. And let's say I reach in and I pick both of these up. Once I've got them both in my hands, I'll go, ew, that doesn't look very good, And so I want to go with the big, bright, shiny one. But the first one you pick up is the one you really need. This is what you want. It's the difference between what we need and what we want. If we can have both, that's great. But otherwise, it's like an energy. It's the things you're attracted to, or like certain friends you want to hang out with, certain people, maybe you hang out with them for a while. My first book was called Gemstone Journeys, because to me it's like friends, like they come in your life for a reason, a season, or a lifetime. And so, and they come in for a while maybe to make a shift, and then you'll just put them away. That's why like a lot of these stones that are out here that I'm selling tonight, how can you sell your personal stones? Because I'll use them for a while and then I'll just be guided that they've got to move on. I was at a show last weekend with my friend Patty back there and Wanda, and I put out some stones again that had never been out of the house before. So I was over there going, and they were like, what are you doing? I was like, I'm just saying goodbye, because somebody went to live with someone else besides me. But anyway, I just kind of am into like really releasing a lot of that stuff after a while that we don't need. Because everything's kind of cyclical in this life, Okay, let me get back to the breastplate stones so I can... What?
What's the title of that?
Oh, I need to give you this. Order it tonight on Amazon and Kindle before midnight. It's free. It's called Divination of God.
I already ordered it.
Oh, you did? See, Phil goes, how are they going to do that? They've all got phones. That's how. So anyway, also, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, emeralds. Emeralds are, I've got some emeralds up here. These are vibrating at the green ray. So the green ray is opening the heart. This is good for healing the physical heart as well as the emotional heart. Very, very powerful. That was in the breastplate. Emerald. This was in the second row. Emerald, sapphire, what?
You've got the stones on page 168 in this book.
In this book? Oh, good. Okay, thank you. Hey,
What's the sapphire?
The sapphire is the blue ray. So it would open up the throat chakra. The throat's about like to me, for a lot of us, it's about like speaking truth, which sadly in this society we can't do a lot. Okay, so in this book, like if you read my first book, Edgar Cayce's Guide to Gemstones, I do more of a like, gee, I wonder which one this is kind of dissertation. I don't want to rehash that in the second book. So in the second book, I chose the stones that were in the King James Version of the Bible, and that's the ones that you're going to get in here. So on row 1, we have sardius, topaz, carbuncle, emerald, sapphire, and diamond. And then we have emerald is vibrating at the same frequency as the color green. And so it opens up the heart chakra. And the heart chakra would be either about physical heart problems or like emotional heart, like loving self, loving others, things like that.
And the diamond?
The diamond is, I talk a lot about Herkimer diamonds because they're a little bit more accessible, but any kind of diamond is carbon-based. So there's this whole concept in the spiritual community that we have certain DNA that we come in here with, but that if we use prayer and meditation, then we can begin asking that new strands of DNA be activated to expand our like cosmic awareness, which I know is pretty far out. But diamonds are really good for kind of the fundamental building blocks of our being and tapping into really high level of spiritual wisdom. And I've heard of healers, gem healers, who will actually literally use real diamonds in their work. But for the rest of us, I always talk about these really cool ones called Herkimer diamonds. They come from this mine in New York. They're really, really cool. They're not as prevalent as they used to be because, again, like with a lot of these things, like this turquoise I'm wearing tonight, it came from that Bisbee area that really isn't open anymore. You know, that's one thing about gems that's so special is that each one of them really is a unique creation. There will never be another one exactly like it. And that's the reason why, to answer your question, like which one would be more effective for somebody, it's hard to say because when the stone kind of picks you, it's kind of a bond there. You know, there's a reason for that. It's an energetic thing. It's very powerful. So diamonds are very powerful. Beryls would be, the emerald is a form of a beryl, but there's many other beryls. I've got up here, I have aquamarine. This is a very, these are tumbled aquamarines. Usually you see them in a jewelry store, but aquamarines to me are, I see a lot of psychic readers using these because they help them. You know, there's different ways that we receive psychic information. Of course, we could either see visions, we either hear it, or we kind of have a gut knowing. But a lot of people who are giving readings professionally, you know, they're trying to kind of hear their guides tell them and see things so that they can deliver a message. But it helps all of us to kind of tune in and open up to that. But aquamarines are really good for that. And this is a form of beryl. Another one would be like a morganite, which is oh my gosh, it's so beautiful. Oh, it's a beautiful little high frequency pink stone, and a kunzite, which is, oh, I had this amazing kunzite once. It's kind of a stone that's really high frequency. It's kind of vibrating at the frequency of like the fairy realm, you know, the little people from Ireland, the wee folk. I'm on a roll. Patty and I were talking about Ireland today. I'm sorry. I love it.
Amazonite in that same class, or is that different?
That is different, but Amazonite is good for universal love and healing. Very, very powerful.
Which one?
It's called Amazonite. It's a green stone. It's kind of a tealy green stone with white bands going through it. It's called Amazonite. I've got another book getting ready to come out, and Amazonite's going to be featured in that one. So is polished better than not polished? Again, it would have to do with the frequencies. I mean, sometimes I think, like, I like the raw stuff because it's just fresh out of the earth. But a lot of people really, when I teach my gem classes, a lot of the people that I had been teaching historically over the years, they've never heard about this before. They're not going to run around with something, poking them in the leg, you know, because a lot of, even my guys love to, they'll be like, hey, Dr. Shelley, I've got my rocks in my pocket, in my jean pocket. You know, so sometimes the tumblestones are really good for that. And I still think it has to do with the attraction of the stones. I love the raw pieces, but they're all good. And some people think, well, isn't that damaging its energy if we put it in a tumbler or we cut and polish and things like that? I kind of think of stones as consciousness. So on some level, they chose to be put in that new form. Because each form, like I've had stones like sodalite I like to talk about a lot. Sodalite's a dark blue stone, and it's got bands of calcium in it. One time I was doing kind of what I'm doing. I had a personal piece of sodalite. So I reach out to this lady, she's going to take it. The thing cracked in my hand. It didn't want to go. Oh, it was so sad. I was like, oh my gosh, well, I guess she doesn't want that one anymore. But it totally changed its energy. You know, so now it's 2 pieces, but it's got a totally different energy frequency. So it's kind of weird, but it happens.
So just whatever you're attracted to.
Whatever you're attracted to, whatever it looks like. But again, that's why I was like, please don't look in the bucket. Let's reach into it with our spiritual self to pick out the thing that we truly need rather than what we want. I guess I want to spend the last couple minutes speaking of that. Like, how are we going to use the stones? Like, let's say we're a massage therapist. I mean, well, a massage therapist, you're doing more hands-on work. But let's say even if you are a massage therapist, you can sit the stones around the massage table and kind of create a grid there. You could lay a stone. Like, I was doing energy healing, so I'd lay stones. Like, have a person face down on a massage table, just put some different stones on the back, and then in the book I talk about the first thing that my shaman friend had taught me was what he called giving someone a bath. Like, how many do Reiki in here? Everyone, yippee. No, I'm just kidding. So when I took Reiki, you know, we were talking about like there's energy, there's our chakra centers, but there's energy fields around the body. And so the goal of any energy healing is just to get this energy moving. So in Reiki, you know, we would like kind of fluff them up with our hands. But in energy healing with gemstones, we can take, I like amethyst. I think an amethyst chunk like this is a great thing to use, and just send this through the fields to kind of get the energy moving. And so if I was a massage therapist, which I'm not, but you know, even that, you could run it over their field and then give them their massage, or you could lay it around in a grid, place it on.
Is black coral a stone?
Is black coral a stone? Coral is what we would call an organic mineral because it's part of, you know, the earth, part of the living organism. Coral is really good for the skeletal structure. Very powerful. So yes, it's a mineral, but it's an organic mineral. And then there's different kinds. I've got corals up here too. Well, yeah, like this, for example. Here's a piece of black coral. And then I've got this other, these are really cute. I got these down at the Sea of Cortez, but they're all a little bit different. Somebody said, you're not going and picking coral up. Well, yeah, it's on the beach already. I would never go out and disrupt coral because it used to be alive, but these are very, very powerful. So in a sense, yes, pearls, coral, things like that, organic. Coral is good for the skeleton, like the skeletal structure. It helps calcium absorption, and it kind of helps you, I don't know, it helps kind of the spine. The other one that does is, where did I put it? Oh, this is another one. This is really interesting. These are peridots, which in the Cayce material, we would call it chrysolite. This is a stone in the breastplate. These peridot crystals are forming, this one's kind of also another one that's good for the spine. That's what was making me think about it. This is volcanic material, and these little crystals are forming on it. So this peridot stuff, it's a long story how I meet these miners. I had literally tubs of this stuff in my backyard. So I gave one to my friend, and her leg was literally out of socket. She lays it on there, and it went, and it just snapped back into place. I was like, my God, this is incredible. So I call this the chiropractor of the mineral kingdom. You need to be snapped back into place. This is it. So, and it's kind of one that's kind of helping us adjust. I went to different parts of the world to teach this material. I went up to Seattle. I have a soul group up there. I love them. These people went crazy over this stuff. I mean, certain areas, the people, you know, I think we're all in kind of soul groups. Like this is a soul group here. A lot of you, God bless you, I've known you for years. And there's just different pockets of people and things that they're resonating with. So this is really big in Seattle. I don't know why, but I love it. Chiropractor in a box. What else?
Tanzanite.
Which one?
Tanzanite.
Tanzanite? Yes, the purple stone. I haven't worked with tanzanite that much because it had been kind of off the market for a while because of the stuff going on, like because in Africa it's hard to get. I'm really into a lot of these stones in Africa, though. I went there several years ago. There's a really powerful energy over there, like spiritually. I don't know. There's something. The problem with the tanzanite is that I don't know how to explain it. It's just there's some difficulties in getting it out, if you understand what I'm saying.
Mines are playing out also, supposedly.
Yes, and there's a lot of, I don't know, there's a lot of unrest in that region. So that's why I haven't personally worked with it that much.
What about jet?
Jet, yes. Jet is like it's an organic coal, like it's a hardened coal. Any dark stones, like what we talked about, like the hematite, or like a black tourmaline or a jet, there's certain stones that will kind of do what I was talking about earlier, that like spiritually protect you, like put a wall around you kind of to kind of protect your energy fields, and jet is one of those. It's very powerful. I had a piece. I was at the Fort Worth Fair the other day and somebody bought my jet, so I don't have that one anymore. So. Obsidian, yes. Yes, and in a sense, like the material that's underneath these peridot, that's kind of an obsidian material. Obsidian would be any of these dark volcanic materials. So. All right, so let me see. I guess I've got a few books left. The books are $15. Everything over here is like $5, and all this is for adoption if anyone wants it. The Malachite, if anyone's interested in that, let me know. And other than that, there was a mailing list going around. I just bought a travel agency. Yay! Because I want to take people on trips. And so if you signed up to my mailing list, you would be signed up for Past Life Lady, which is my website, and Red Sky Travel and Tours. It's going to look like, if you signed up for that, you're just going to get a little weekly travel thing. But as soon as I make the decision about where we're going to go, one of the places I think I want to go next year will be to take a cruise out over into that area around like the Dominican Republic and stuff, into some of the areas kind of over where Atlantis had been. So if anyone's interested in that, just be on my mailing list and I'll be sending it to you because I want to go over there. I want to take people on trips. This is like when I was finishing up my living life review, I started thinking about like, what do I really want to do, you know? What's left undone and what do I want to do next? I really want to do what I've been thinking about doing, which is starting to take people on some trips. And I like to cruise. I know we have someone who just got off a cruise ship. Yay! I love cruising because you can hit a lot of the world very quickly. And if you love this place once you see it, you can come back. And if you hate it, you say, woo, thank God I didn't rent a condo here for a week. You know? And so I just want to take people on some cruises and just have some fun and do some workshops and things like that. So if that's of interest, get on my mailing list, and I'll be up here if you want to talk to me some more, obviously. And I am so grateful you came out tonight. It has been so much fun, and I thank you so much. Question?
Yeah, I'm not sure how to phrase this. What about, how does petrified wood or petrified things come into play with?
I have petrified wood on this evening. Yay! Petrified wood, I almost brought some amber too. You know, amber's like petrified resin from a tree. But petrified wood, to me, you know, the trees, just like the rocks, they have wisdom in those rings if we could just get in there and talk to them. So depending on where it comes from, when you meditate with it, I think it can continue into past lives, but I also think it's kind of geologically tied a lot to the area where it comes from. Like this one came from the Southwest. So it just kind of depends on where your petrified wood's from. But I think you can, you know how you do psychometry where you hold on to an object and then you kind of let it take you back to its source? I think you can use it for like dream quests, like journeying to go back to the source. And even if it's a place maybe you didn't live in a past life, you can kind of tune into that and have it kind of share some wisdom with you, like on either a visual level, a dream level, or more on a kind of fundamental level. It's very, very powerful. I haven't had, a lot of the stuff I'm wearing tonight is real, real old. This is one that I've had for years and years, but it's very, very powerful, and I love it. Any others? All right, you guys are awesome, and I thank you. God bless you, and I will see you soon.